It's a new month, and so that means that we decide which one of these books I'm going to be reading by spinning this. It's time to play Fiction Roulette. So as always, I'm going to let the wheel decide what I read and review in the month of December. The wheel is filled with things that I'm really excited to read, and I just spin the wheel 4 times each month. I usually read more than 4 books per month, but this just helps me really nail down these are 4 books that I'm definitely going to read no matter what. Let's get started by talking about what's on the wheel for the month of December. Can you believe another year went by? Mental. So first up on the wheel for the month of December is The Visitor by Sergio Gomez. So I was thinking, let's kick things off with like a spooky little slice of Christmas horror / sci-fi. This book is set in Christmas time in a small town in Indiana, and the state is suffering a kind of like historic snowstorm. And so 5 strangers seek refuge in in this like roadside diner, and together they're trapped inside by, the relentless snowfall, the icy roads, the plummeting temperatures, and they're just forced to spend the holiday together under these harsh conditions. And the group is like initially battling this unforgiving weather. However, the true danger arrives when a 6th stranger opens the door to the diner, ding-a-ding-a-ding, and everyone looks at him and goes, hang on a minute. That is not a human. Sounds creepy, but also I think it has the potential to be really gruesome, quite funny. And honestly, this book is perfect for this time of year. When else am I going to read this? Think about it, So very short as well. Nice little short book. The next book on the wheel is The Wager by David Grann. This is actually a book that I picked up in like the park library. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're probably thinking I'm mental. Do you know like those boxes that are in some parks in America, maybe England as well? It's been a while since I lived in England. And they've got books there where you can just sort of like switch out books and read them. Really nice little cute thing that people do. And anyway, I always look and I very rarely find anything that I'm really interested in, got to be honest. I drop off a lot of books there, but yeah, just not that lucky with finding books that I'm actually interested in. But this was the exception. I found this and I went, yoink. So what is this book about? It's a true story of a British warship that wrecked off the coast of Patagonia in 1742 during a secret mission to capture a Spanish ship containing treasure. What a time to be alive when ships, on behalf of Her Majesty or His Majesty, whoever it was at the time, are traveling across the 7 seas in pursuit of Spanish ships containing treasure to snatch it away. It always amazes me that these are things that actually happened, not in some fantasy world created by J.R.R. Tolkien, but here, people used to try and steal treasure from each other. Anyway, this is the story of how they fail and are stranded on a barren island. The crew faced with hunger, like harsh conditions. They're all turning on each other, and 2 groups of survivors eventually make it back, each accusing the other one of mutiny and murder and cruelty. And by the way, I'm saying all of this. This is not spoilers. So don't say, spoilers. This isn't spoilers. This is all on the back of the book, right? I haven't read it. So this is just what the book is about. Honestly, this book sounds fascinating, and it's written by the same bloke, David Grann, who wrote Killers of the Flower Moon. So, can't be bad. Let's talk about the next book that is on the wheel, and that is Red Country by Joe Abercrombie. So this book is about a character named Shy South. She is battle-hardened by life And now she is on a mission to rescue her kidnapped siblings in this like brutal, lawless frontier type world. And I'm really excited to read this book because it sounds like it's going to combine like the Western genre with grim, dark fantasy. She teams up with this other character called Lamb, who's this like super mysterious warrior with his own dark past. And together they're up against the harsh landscapes, the dangerous outlaws. It's kind of gritty and intense. It's set in the world of the First Law universe, which I don't know if you've ever watched this channel before, but if you have, you probably have an idea that I just love this world. I love the First Law. And there's always a chance when you read books that are set in that universe of familiar places or familiar characters popping up. Joe Abercrombie, I think is maybe one of, well, he's definitely one of my favorite fantasy writers, but maybe he might be my favorite fantasy writer. So I'm just absolutely hooked on the world that he's created. I want to go back there and hopefully this one comes up on the wheel. We'll see. Next up is Last Night at the Lobster by Stuart Onan. Yep, Stuart Onan. Had to double check. Sorry, Stuart, if you're watching this. You're not. This is a book that I don't really hear that much about, honestly. This is a story set at this failing Red Lobster in Connecticut, and the whole story happens over the course of one day. It's a few days before Christmas, which is why I kind of picked it for this month. And it's literally the last day of the restaurant's existence. It's the last day that it's going to be open before it shuts down for good. Business, hasn't been that good. And so, yeah, it's over. The main character, Manny, is the manager of the Red Lobster who's, they're just trying to keep things together on the last day, even though the place is basically a sinking ship. They're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. I think what intrigues me about this book is not that it's about some grand plot, but rather that that it's about real people in a setting that I think a lot of us will be very familiar with. Maybe not necessarily a restaurant, but a lot of us have worked in retail or bars or, maybe restaurants as well. I myself used to work in a snooker hall when I was a teenager, and I saw some really horrible, gritty stuff in there. If you imagine the kind of things that are happening on a Saturday night in a snooker hall, it's unsavory. Anyway, Manny and his staff and the customers and the dynamics between them, there's going to be tension, there's going to be disappointment. Maybe there's going to be a little bit of hope too, like maybe there's going to be a Christmas miracle and maybe we can pull something out of the bag, and probably not though. I'm just, I'm really drawn to books that are focused on like the small but meaningful moments captured between people, especially when they're at a crossroads in their life. If you've ever worked for a company that goes under or a place that, shuts down, that last day is really sad, ain't it? When everyone's going, I don't know if we're going to see each other again, but, it's been lovely working with you and all that, spending these years with you. Hopefully our friendship is based on something more than just where we work, but maybe not. And that's a bit sad. Next book on the wheel is a book that I've got coming over to me in the mail as we speak, hoping that it arrives today. Would have been nice if it arrived for this video, but oh well. It's Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame AJ Brenya. It's set in this dystopian world where prisoners are forced into a gladiator-style death match as entertainment for the masses. Like, if you think about it as sports versus reality TV, but sort of cranked up to horrifying levels. Story follows two women who are not just participants, but stars of these brutal games. And I hear that it really digs deep into the choices that they have to make to survive. What I always find really interesting about books like these, like, for example, The Hunger Games or Red Rising or Maze Runner. I never read those books, but, I think it's the same kind of thing. This genre is always able to explore big questions about justice and exploitation, but it's all kind of told through these personal, intense character stories. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. So, yeah, lots of people love this book. Lots of people really love this book. And it only came out last year, I think. So, yeah. The next book I'd love to read is Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart. This is set in 1980s Glasgow during a time of economic struggle. And it's all about, sorry, I got something flying in my face there. It's all about, where was I? A boy named Shuggie he's trying to grow up in this quite harsh environment. Not environment, but harsh circumstances, I would say, while dealing with a lot of stuff that's going on at home. His mother, Agnes, is battling alcoholism, and their relationship, I think, is really what is at the heart of this story. It's supposed to be a real like mother and son story about family sticking together through tough times. And what's interesting is that it's not just about Shuggie's life, it's also about the world around him, you know, the poverty, the addiction, family, identity, in this like really raw and honest way. This is the way that it was described to me by the shopkeeper when I purchased this when I was in Scotland. So I said, well, you know, point me towards a book that kind of captures the essence of the area, you know? And she pointed at this. Oh, I don't know what that says about now that I think about it. Oh, she has a bit of a bleak view of Scotland, maybe. I like Scotland personally. But yeah, it's set in this harsh environment, but apparently there's a lot of tenderness, there's a lot of love, especially in the way that Shuggie cares for his mother. I've mentioned before how I'm really drawn to characters in the books that I read, above prose, above plot. The characters are really the most important thing to me. And I think that this book is going to have a lot of that, a lot of character, especially since this is a semi-autobiographical book. So the things that happen here are kind of similar to Douglas Stewart's real life. It also won the Booker Prize as well. So I'm really preparing for this book to break my little heart, but I think it'll be worth it. Next book on the wheel is The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. This book feels like the perfect mixture of a classic whodunit and a modern psychological thriller. The setup is pretty simple. A group of friends get together for New Year's Eve in this remote lodge in the Scottish Highlands. It's another one set in Scotland. That's cool. Sounds pretty cozy to begin with, except that someone, a member of the group, ends up dead. And it turns out that pretty much everyone has secrets and vendettas against one another, and they all come to the surface. You know how these things go. What's really cool is that the story jumps between perspectives. So you get to see how all these relationships are unraveling as the tension builds. And I think with the kind of like snowy, isolated setting during New Year's Eve, it's the perfect time of year to read this. If it does come up on the wheel, then I'll definitely read it between that weird time between Christmas and New Year's Eve, you know, when everyone's just like, I don't know what to do with myself. That's going to be the best time to read this, I think. I've read a couple of Lucy Foley books in the past. I really liked The Guest List, and I did not particularly like The Paris Apartment that much. So hopefully this is more like the former than the latter. Next book on the wheel is this really ambiguous There Is No Antimemetics Division, written by, is this written by QNTM? No, surely not. Who named him? Elon Musk? That might not be the author's name. I don't want to look it up because I just want to go into this one completely cold. This is one of those books where I saw the title and immediately I knew I was going to buy it. This one just sounds wild. It's set in a world where certain ideas known as anti-memes are literally impossible to remember or comprehend. And the Antimemetics Division is tasked with fighting these things, except, you know, it isn't, because It doesn't exist. So this book is supposed to play with memory, logic, perception. Like imagine trying to battle against threats that you cannot describe or even recall. How do you even start to deal with that? You know, I've heard that the story has elements of sci-fi, clearly, but also horror and mystery all rolled into one, with a lot of mind-bending moments that you just have to sit with and try to wrap your head around. You know, this book, probably more than any other, has got me curious. So yeah, the only other book where I've ever felt this kind of same, is House of Leaves by Danielewski. But yeah, I think this is going to have a similar kind of vibe. The next book on the wheel is one that I only have on Kindle, and that is A Town Divided by Christmas by Orson Scott Card. So you probably noticed by now that this month's reading wheel has quite a heavy Christmas theme. This is about two researchers who travel to this small American town in the South to study the effects of a genetic test on the local population. And when the researchers arrive, the town is already deeply divided by this like long-standing Christmas pageant rivalry, and things get a little bit more complicated when the researchers insert themselves and they start getting involved in the community and try to explain why it is that they have this difference of opinion. I saw a review of this, and this is what really captured my attention. The review said that this is like if Orson Scott Card wrote a Hallmark movie. So if you don't know, this is the writer who created Ender's Game. So imagine that crossover. The next book, all right, I don't want you to get angry with me, but there is a very famous fantasy book that I've never read, and I've seen all the movies and I loved all the movies and everything. And that book is, can you guess what it is? Take a little guess. It's The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And also, you go, oh, that's a nice little book, isn't it? That's a beautiful little book. Look, even better, came in this little package as well. Probably a lot of you will have this as well. Looks really nice on a bookshelf, doesn't it? Anyway, The Hobbit. I hardly need to tell you what this story is about, but all right, really quickly, it's about a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins who's basically living his quiet life in the Shire until a wizard named Gandalf shows up and ropes him into an epic quest. Like I say, I've never read The Hobbit. I know it's a sin that I haven't read this book. I've got to rectify it. Also, it just seems like a great time of year, you know, to read something nice and cozy, you know, Christmas time. So anyway, those are your contestants. So now let's spin the wheel and find out what I'm going to be reading in the month of December. Oh, just before I do, I've got one thing to tell you. So I'm currently recording A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. If you don't know, I'm an audiobook narrator. And so I'm going to be releasing this as an audiobook on the channel, right? So you don't have to buy nothing, don't worry. I'm not trying to stick my hand in your pocket. This is just something I'm giving to everyone for free. So it's, you know, if you've never read A Christmas Carol, maybe you've just seen the Muppet version. It's actually a really small book. I think this audiobook that I'm recording is going to be about 3 hours long. So if you'd like to hear my reading of that and just get into the spirit of Christmas, if you celebrate it, then make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and then you'll be notified when that comes out. It's my favorite book of all time, if you must know. To me, it's perfect, and I cry every time when I read it, including when I narrated the audiobook. I was sitting in my little sound studio next door, and I was crying like a child. Don't worry, I edited those bits out. You're not going to hear me crying in the audio version. Okay, so the 4 books that I'm going to be reading coming up. Oh, and I always forget this as well. I go by this. I don't go by this. I go by this. All right, let's go. What's that? A Town Divided by Christmas by Orson Scott Card. All right, that's a good one. Very, very seasonal. Yeah, if you don't believe me, can you even see that? You can't see that. I can see it. Just take my word for it. That's A Town Divided by Christmas. Next up, The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. All right, so that's cool. I will definitely be reading that between the week of Christmas and New Year's Eve. So that's perfect. All right, next up, getting nervous now. Chain Gang All-Stars. All right, excellent. So Chain Gang All-Stars. So not everything has to be seasonal, does it? You know, we're allowed to mix it up a little bit if we want to. All right, last one that I'm definitely going to be reading in the month of December. The Hunting Party again. Red Country. All right, so I'm definitely going to be reading Red Country as well by Joe Abercrombie. Really excited about that one, gotta be honest. So, no, that's a nice mixture, you know? You've got a little bit of Christmas in there, and then you've got a bit of, you know, just stuff that I would read throughout the year anyway. And also, just a little heads up, I was thinking this before I spun the wheel. I might slip in The Visitor as well. Do you know what I mean? It's so small. I can read that, like, in a couple of hours, I think, you know. Okay, so those are the 4 books that I'm going to be reading in the month of December. By the way, if you'd like to see what I've read so far this year, I started keeping a record of it on Goodreads, and so you can find my Goodreads account in the description below. If you follow me there, I'll definitely follow you back. And if you're interested to see what I read last month and what I thought of those books, then you can click up here to see that video. Thanks so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. And as always, happy reading. And if you celebrate it, happy Christmas. And if you don't celebrate it, whatever you're celebrating, I hope you have a good one of those. And if you celebrate nothing, then I just hope you have a lovely day, basically. All right, thanks a lot. See you later.